It can be very frustrating for supporters when they see a top player failing to perform on a consistent basis at international level. International football is very different to the club game, and it's no surprise that some players struggle to adapt. While you train 6 days a week with your club teammates, you may only train a few weeks a year with your national teammates, and you may be expected to learn to play in a whole new system or position in that time. There is also the additional stresses and expectations of playing international football. Having the weight of a team's supporters resting upon you is one thing. Having an entire nation's hopes, dreams and expectations on your shoulders can be a whole different ballgame, and simply too much for some players to handle. All of the players in this seven had much hope pinned upon them, and most had excellent club careers, yet for one reason or another, they failed to come through for their national teams. The seven only includes players who represented at the very least a competitive national team, where there was some chance of shining on the international stage, and most played for established footballing powers. Here are our top 7 footballers who never came through for their national team. Nwankwo Kanu. Former Arsenal, Ajax, Inter Milan and Portsmouth forward Nwankwo Kanu's list of achievements is something to behold. The Nigerian striker won 14 trophies over his career, including multiple league titles in Nigeria, Holland and England, as well as winning the Champions League, UEFA Cup, Super Cup, Intercontinental Cup and the FA Cup. Twice named African Footballer of the Year, Kanu should have been the talisman of Nigeria's golden generation, an era of players including the likes of JJ Okocha and Finidi George. Yet Kanu never delivered, scoring a fairly miserable 12 goals in 87 caps for his country, failing to score in either a World Cup or African Cup of Nations. His only success with Nigeria coming in the 1996 Olympics. Franck Ribery. When Zinedine Zidane retired from football following the 2006 World Cup, Franck Ribery was France's new outstanding talent. Having had a fine tournament in 2006, aged 23, Ribery was expected to inherit the captaincy and inspire France to a new age of success, just as Zidane had a decade earlier. In this sense at least, Ribery has never come through for France. He failed to score for 18 months after Zidane's retirement, did nothing as France failed at Euro 2008, had an absolute disaster at the 2010 World Cup as France were humiliated, and he was ineffective once more at Euro 2012. Ribery was ruled out of the 2014 World Cup through injury and chose to retire from international football that year, with a record of 16 goals from 81 caps, and having failed in every tournament since the 2006 World Cup. England's Golden Generation. There are too many players from England's failed golden generation to name them all in a list of just 7. There were some exceptions to this rule. Ashley Cole in particular always maintained his club form at international level, but few others did likewise. Wayne Rooney, despite being England's all-time top scorer, has routinely failed at every single major tournament since Euro 2004. Steven Gerrard and Frank Lampard, both excellent players, failed to gel and find any kind of form on the major stage alongside one another. Meanwhile, Paul Scholes, who was arguably the most talented of the lot, only won 66 caps, was often pushed out to the left wing and retired at 29. Mark Viduka. Another player born into a golden generation. In Mark Viduka's case, it was the Australian national team of the 2000s. One of the oldest players of this so-called golden generation, alongside the likes of Tim Cahill, Mark Schwarzer, Harry Kewell and Brett Emerton. Despite being arguably the most talented of the lot, Viduka never really turned it on for the Socceroos. He was a prolific scorer at club level in Australia, Croatia, Scotland and England, perhaps most notably with Leeds United in the Premier League. Despite his excellent club form, Viduka was poor for Australia, managing only 11 goals in 43 caps, none in major competitions, with 9 of his 11 goals coming against hardly footballing powerhouses in the form of Tunisia, Solomon Islands, Jamaica, Singapore, Iraq and Thailand. John Barnes. An England player but not one from the golden generation, John Barnes was actually born in Kingston, Jamaica. Primarily a left winger, Barnes made a name for himself at Watford, where he spent 6 years, before joining Liverpool in 1987, going on to spend a decade at Anfield. Barnes was superb on Merseyside, and was even named by 442 as Liverpool's greatest ever player. His international form never mirrored his club success though. Despite winning 79 caps for England, Barnes was agonisingly inconsistent. He scored one of England's greatest ever goals against Brazil in a friendly, but England never quite got the best out of him, with Bobby Robson describing him as the greatest enigma of his career. Alan Hansen. Another Liverpool legend, Alan Hansen, was a genuinely world-class defender who had a superb 18-year career, 14 of which were spent at Liverpool. He is among Liverpool's top 10 appearance holders of all time and won an incredible 23 trophies at the club, most notably 8 league titles and 3 European Cups. One of the finest defenders of his generation, one would expect Hansen to have been a nailed-on starter in the Scottish national team for more than a decade, but that wasn't the case. Hansen won only 26 caps for his country, largely down to the preferred defensive pairing of Willie Miller and Alex McLeish, who played alongside one another at club level for Aberdeen. Given just how good Hansen was for Liverpool, it's incredible that he couldn't get more game time in a decent but far from spectacular Scotland team. His international career effectively ended in 1986, when Sir Alex Ferguson didn't even include the defender in his 23-man World Cup squad. Nicolas Anelka. Nicolas Anelka has been something of an enigma throughout his career. Undoubtedly skillful and gifted, Anelka has been labelled a mercenary and a journeyman by many. With a list of former clubs which includes the likes of PSG, Arsenal, Real Madrid, Liverpool, Manchester City, Chelsea and Juventus, it's clear that some of the world's best managers identified Anelka as a top-class player. He has won league titles in England, Turkey and Italy, as well as having won the Champions League. He scored more than 200 goals in his career and more than 100 in the Premier League. 69 caps for the French national team shows that Anelka got more than a fair crack of the whip at international level. Yet he did very little. He scored 14 goals in those 69 games, a goal scoring rate far below his club record. Anelka didn't manage a single goal in a World Cup or European Championships, and what's worse, unlike most on this list who simply failed, Anelka was also highly disruptive at times. Having failed at every major tournament he ever played in, Anelka was a big part of France's collapse and humiliation at the 2010 World Cup. So that's it for our top 7. Let us know some players who you felt disappointed for their national teams, and if you're feeling especially kind, go ahead and like this video and subscribe to HITC Sevens.